So we will continue from the previous lecture. So today, the first property we'll discuss here, that is
Sir, recording time.
from my side there is no provision to record the class.
স্যার আমরা করছি স্যার
Okay, I have no problem then, but we are not getting that option in our Google Meet.
ইয়েস স্যার
Let me check again. No, that option is not here.
ইয়েস স্যার নো প্রবলেম স্যার
Okay. Now, what is resilience? By definition, resilience is ability of a material. I may write like this: ability of a material
To store
to
energy.
to absorb energy when loaded elastically and release the energy when unloaded. Okay. Now see, say for example, this is my stress strain curve. Say this is my elastic point here. Now, ability of a material to absorb energy when loaded elastically. So I can apply the load up to this, but when the load will be applied to the component, to a material will absorb some amount of energy, and that energy will be stored in terms of or in the form of strain. So that is basically strain energy. But when the strain energy nature is elastic, or when the load is applied up to elastic point, when the load will be withdrawn, the material will regain its original shape and size. So that energy will be released. So that property is basically called resilience property. And this resilience can be measured by modulus of resilience. Now, what is modulus of resilience? Modulus of resilience is the strain energy, per unit volume which is required stretch the material up to elastic limit and release the energy when unloaded. So what is modulus of resilience? So it is the strain energy per unit volume that is required to stretch the specimen up to elastic limit. So if I see in the stress strain curve, if I draw this vertical line, so this will be basically modulus of resilience. Okay. Now, when this property is important, because when we will try to design a spring material, say, as a property of the spring, when we apply the load, the material, the spring will deform, and the energy will be stored in the form of strain. When the load will be withdrawn, the spring should regain its original shape and size. So when we try to design a spring material, the spring material should have good resilience property in it. Then only it is possible to make the spring out of that material. Is it clear? Now, similar to this, we have another property that is called toughness. In your applied mechanics lab, probably you have studied this thing. right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So you know how to measure the
Yes.
toughness and what is the definition of toughness. So basically the definition is ability of the material
Sir, ISO test chart.
Now, what is modulus of toughness? The total area under stress strain curve up to fracture, that area is basically the modulus of toughness. So this area. Okay, so this is basically modulus of toughness. Now, how do we measure it in our laboratory? So there are two methods. One is isodentate test. One is Charpy test.
Charpy method. Yes.
So from here you will get one number, and depending on that you may estimate what is the value of or what is the level of toughness in that material. Now another property is malleability property of the material. Malleability. What is that? That is the ability of the material to deform under the action of compressive load. If you try to make one sheet metal, then you have to apply compressive load. Say for example, you have to do forging operation or rolling operation. I mean, forging operation, rolling operation, what we do? In rolling operation, basically there are numbers of rollers, and through this you have to pass your material. It may be like this. Due to the compression of this, like this. So this material will be deformed to a different size. So basically the compressive stresses or compressive forces will be acting on the material. In forging operation also, basically we apply the force to deform the material. So in the deformation processes where compressive forces are there, this malleability property is essential property. So what is malleability? It is the ability of the material to deform under the action of compressive load. Clear? Now, there is another property. That property is called ductility property. What is ductility? So it is the ability of the material to sustain large plastic deformation before or large plastic deformation without fracture in tension. And how do we measure the ductility property? By calculating percentage
Tension.
elongation or reduction in area. Yes, from the tension test, we may get the stress strain curve, and from there we may estimate the value of ductility of this material. So it is the ability of the material to sustain large plastic deformation, permanent deformation without fracture in tension. So when this ductility properties is required in material, when unanticipated overload is there in the material or in the machine, this ductility property will help you to make the design possible. So ductility is another essential property in the material. And if you notice that for cast iron material and for say mild steel material, if you see the stress strain curve, and from there only you can compare these two curves and you can say yes, ductility is more in mild steel material compared to brittle material, say cast iron. Okay, so this is the ability of the material to sustain large permanent or plastic deformation without fracture in tension. So if you try to make wear type component, then you have to apply tensile force there. So this ductility property should be there. So easily you may find the suitable material for this type of applications. Now, opposite to this ductility property is brittleness. What is brittleness then? So it is the ability of the material to fail with no or little permanent deformation. That should be the definition of brittleness, just opposite to ductility.
Yes. Yes.
Ductility, your percentage elongation or permanent deformation should be large. In brittleness, your permanent deformation or plastic deformation should be very low, or there should be no plastic deformation or little. We cannot say low. We cannot say there is no plastic deformation. There should be some amount of plastic deformation, but the amount may be very low. Okay, so that is the definition of brittleness. Now, coming to another parameter, let's call hardness. Have you tested one material for hardness in your applied mechanics laboratory? Do you know any
No.
hardness
No,
number?
sir.
The
No, sir.
Brinell test.
Brinell test.
Rockwell hardness.
Yes. Okay. So first of all, what is hardness? It is the resistance to wear, resistance to say, scratching, resistance to indentation. So it is the resistance to squares, wear, indentation like this.
Sir,
Now-
indentation.
Yes, I will explain that thing. What is indentation? First, you try to write the definition. This is the ability, or better, I should put resistance. Resistance to okay. Now we may classify hardness into scratch hardness, it's called dynamic or rebound hardness, and indentation hardness. This is basically scratch hardness. It is basically the primary interest of mineralogist. In different minerals, we try to find the scratch hardness. And this is related to various minerals and other materials, and these materials are related on their ability to scratch one on the other. Okay, and there is basically one scale. That scale is called Mohs scale. The value is 1 to 10, and for talc it is 1, for diamond it is 10. For different hard materials, this value may vary to 4 to 6. So this is the primary interest for the mineralogist. And various materials and other materials are related on their ability to scratch on the other. That is basically the concept of scratch hardness. And using this scale, Mohs scale, we try to estimate that thing, taking a range of 1 to 10. A very soft one, as talc is 1. If you use talc to scratch with other one, there should not be any scratch. But with diamond, there should be one scratch. So that way we try to take the scale 1 to 10. Now for dynamic hardness or rebound hardness, what we do? Basically, there should be one indenter. An indenter usually dropped onto the metal surface. And the hardness is expressed as the energy of impact. Using that, we try to express the hardness value. So there is one term, you may see this thing, Schroth celeroscope. It measures the hardness in terms of rebound of the indenter. That is called dynamic or rebound hardness. Probably in applied mechanics lab, recently they have purchased one. I do not know whether that machine is readily available or not, but that machine should be there. So when your hardness test will be done, at that time you may ask your professor whether that rebound hardness or dynamic hardness tester is available with them. Then you can see that machine also. Probably scratch hardness tester is not available there, but in our machine elements laboratory we have one scratch tester, and from there we may find it. Now indentation hardness, what is indentation hardness? There should be one indenter. What we do, there is one say machine. In that machine there should be one say diamond indenter. Okay, with different shapes, we will get different shapes. And with that indenter, basically we try to apply the force on the specimen. Say for example, your specimen is steel material, steel specimen. So on that steel specimen, with a load, we will apply that indenter, and when the load will be applied, that indenter, that means the indenter will put one impression on the specimen surface. So we'll try to measure or examine that indentation, and from there we'll try to calculate the hardness of the material. So that is the concept of indentation hardness. So there should be one indenter, and using that indenter, we'll try to deform the specimen with a certain load as specified by the standard for that particular test. And from there, we'll try to calculate the hardness value of the material. And here we use different scales, like say Brinell hardness test. And using this Brinell hardness test, if we try to calculate the hardness, that hardness is called BHN. So basically, indentation hardness is expressed in terms of some numbers, and that number is basically dependent on the method of making test. So if we use a Rockwell test, hardness test, Generally, we use HRC, HRB. Depending on the scale selected, there are 3 scale A, B, C, and depending on that, we may express the hardness like Vickers hardness test. We express in terms of BHN, sometimes in DPH, where it's called Diamond Pyramid Hardness Number. Okay, so that way we try to express that thing. Now coming to the concept of Binel hardness test and Rockwell hardness test like this. In detail you will learn in your applied mechanics laboratory. Here I will try to put some basic concept and how we can express the number, hardness number using Binel hardness test. Now in Binel hardness test, what we do, here what we do, there should be a ball, steel ball. The diameter is 10 millimeter. That ball is used to indent the metal surface, for which you try to get the hardness value. And load value is basically generally, load is generally 3000 kg. With this load, we try to apply that load on the metal surface using a steel ball of 10 millimeter diameter. If the material is very soft, if material is soft, then we have to reduce this load to 500 kg. Now, load with time we will apply that thing. Now, when we will apply this load on the surface, suppose say for example, that is basically our surface, and we are using our ball here to indent this surface, then definitely there should be one impression of this ball here. This material will deform, right? Now say for example, my deformation is like this. Due to the indentation of this. Now your ball is, sorry, I am using a different color here. Okay. Now say this diameter D, we are applying P amount of load, and due to this impression, this dimension, physically we can measure it small d. Okay. Now from here we'll try to calculate the Binel hardness number of the material. Binel hardness number of the material. So here generally what we do, probably the equation is like this. You may check with any standard book. P divided by the area here, surface area of the indentation. Okay, surface area of the indentation. So this area can be calculated when you will get the impression of this ball here on the surface of the specimen. Then you may measure it physically, and from there you may calculate the surface area, and load divided by that surface area will be termed as the Vinel hardness number of that material. Now, as you can see, load amount is basically say kg. We have applied the load in kg, and surface area should be in millimeter square. Okay, so units of BHN should be kg per millimeter square. That should be the unit of the Vinel hardness number. Now, as you can see, if I change the applied load, then your BHN also will change. Now, what we try to do is, we always try to estimate or always try to relate your tensile stress properties with this with the other properties. So, is there any relationship between this Vinel hardness test or number or Vinel hardness number with your tensile test data? Yes, we try to. Generally, our popular material is steel material. For steel material, sometimes we use this expression to estimate. It is not the accurate one. Sigma ut, that is called tensile strength, is generally we consider as 3.4 into the BHN of that material. So roughly we may estimate this BHN value from your tensile test data, or from BHN we may try to calculate or try to estimate the tensile strength of the material. Is for generally it's called for heat treated carbon steel. So that is the concept. That is the concept behind this thing. So here you may calculate this thing, P divided by, if we simplify this thing, pi into d by 2 capital D square minus small d square. That is the value of this Vinel hardness number. Understand?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now,
Yes, sir.
right. In Vinel hardness test, we have used surface area, right? There is another
Yes.
indentation hardness that is called, sorry. Here, similar to Vinel hardness test, we try to apply the load, but to calculate the hardness, Mayer hardness number, here, based on the projected area of the impression, we try to calculate the Mayer hardness number. In Vinel hardness test, what we have used? We have used the surface area. But here in Mayer hardness test, we do not use the surface area, but we try to get the projected area to calculate the hardness number. And now you know what is projected area. That means basically from the concept of your engineering drawing, you know if we try to project that area, the area you can see that is the projected area. And here your MHN should be load divided by projected area should be pi by 4 into d square. If you remember, d is the impression diameter, so pi by 4 d square should be the projected area. Surface area will be different thing, but projected area will be pi by 4 d square. So this equation should be used to calculate the Mayer hardness number. Okay. Now another thing is Vickers hardness test. It is also called diamond pyramid hardness test. Here, what we do, we use one square base diamond pyramid, and using this diamond pyramid, we try to indent the specimen. And using that equation, load divided by surface area of the indentation, we try to calculate the Vickers hardness number, VHN. Okay.
Okay.
VHN
Yes.
basically load divided by surface area of the indentation. Surface area of the indentation. So using this, we can calculate Vickers hardness VHN. Also, it is called DPH, diamond pyramid hardness number. So here also we use surface area of the indentation to calculate this thing. Any problem from your side?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. Now for Rockwell hardness test, basically we use different scales to calculate the Rockwell hardness number. As I said earlier, there are three scales A, B, and C. Here also there is one scale where when the load will be applied, you can see there should be one dial, and using that you can see what is the value there corresponding to the dial, and from there you can say yes, this is the Rockwell hardness number. That is particular one number. Okay. So for scale A, probably the load is 60 kg. Load B, it should be about, I think, 100 kg, and it is 150 kg. So there should be one dial like this, and there should be values. If you come to this applied mechanics laboratory there, so using this dial, you can see when the load will be applied on the specimen, you can see this dial will be with one number, and that number is basically the Rockwell number of the component of the material. Okay. Now for soft materials generally we use B scale. So here when we use this material, when we use this test, and corresponding to one load, there should be one letter A, B, C. So we can say HRC, HR like this also, it may be subscript, and HRB, HRA. So based on the scale selected for the test, we can say whether it is HRC, HRB, or HRA. So this is the principle of different indentation hardness measurement. So from your side, is there any question?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
Okay. The next material property we will try to define. Okay, that is called endurance limit. What is endurance limit? It is basically the maximum completely reverse stress. I should write like this: maximum completely reverse stress for which it is assumed that the material will not fail regardless the number of cycles. So that is the definition of endurance limit or fatigue limit. What is this? Maximum completely reverse stress, for which it is assumed that the material will not fail regardless the number of cycles. Now, what is maximum completely reverse stress? So first we have to find reverse stress, completely reverse stress, then maximum completely reverse stress. So this endurance limit is applicable when the component is subjected to fatigue loading. So we may classify loading into two. Static and dynamic. You know, in static loading, when the load will be applied, it should be applied gradually. After reaching its maximum value, it will not change its direction, magnitude, etc., etc. But for dynamic loading, it may change like this. It may be like this. And under dynamic loading, we may classify dynamic loading into say impact loading. We also call it shock, impact load or shock load. And also another one is called fatigue. Under fatigue also, we can also further classify into reversed, repeated, fluctuating, alternating. Now, first thing is, what is fatigue? Impact load, I think you may understand. If I apply suddenly, that should be termed as your impact loading. Fatigue loading, there are different types of fatigue loadings. But always what we do for the simplification, we try to replace the fatigue loading using sinusoid, one sine curve. Okay. Now, what is fatigue? So if I take one example like this, probably in our last class also we discussed this thing. If there is one shaft and shaft is rotating, the fibers of the shaft will experience periodically tension and compression, repeated tension and repeated compression. As a result, the material, the component will fail at a stress level which is less than the tensile strength, sometimes even less than your yield point stress. So this phenomena is called your fatigue phenomena of the material. Now, how we can overcome or how we can design this material? One solution may be increasing the factor of safety of the material. If we increase the factor of safety of the material, what will happen? Unnecessary your dimension of the component will increase. And it is not always possible, or it is not always possible to design the component with huge dimension or large dimension. So that is not economical. Secondly, if we increase the dimension of the component, the probability of having defects in the material will increase. And for dynamic loading or fatigue loading, the procedure of failure is there should be one defect or discontinuity in the material, and from the discontinuity or crack, one small crack will initiate, and that crack will propagate, and when it will reach its critical area, suddenly the component will fail. And that failure will be total failure, that failure will be sudden failure, there will be no indication of that. So since the failure is total failure, so more cautiously you have to make the design of the component. So using simple or increasing the factor of safety always will not work here for fatigue loading. So unnecessary we will not use this simple factor of safety to increase the factor of safety in the design. But here we try to design the component with another material property. So using yield point stress or ultimate point stress will not make the design of the component which is subjected to fatigue loading, but using endurance limit we'll try to design the component. Now here we have to understand what is maximum completely reverse stress. So here we represent these loadings. Say for this is called fluctuating loading. So we represent like this for fluctuating loading. Say your loading is like this. Say my axis is here. This is called origin. Basically T var sigma. T is time here. So the mean of this curve should pass through this. The maximum stress here is this one or this one. It should be same. That is basically say sigma max. Minimum one is here. So this is sigma minimum. This is positive one. This is negative one. Okay. Is there any problem to understand this figure?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Now, here we define two terms. One is called mean stress, sigma m, and amplitude stress, or sometimes call it variable stress, sigma a. So what is mean stress? Mean of the sigma max plus sigma mean or minimum by 2.
Yes, sir.
Variable stress basically maximum stress
Minus minimum by 2.
minus minimum by 2. So this is for fluctuating loading. What is reverse loading then? For reverse loading, the load is applied like this. It should be same amplitude, okay, like this. This is the origin, sigma, this is positive side, this is negative side, and this is basically your time. Now here you see, sigma max is this amount, sigma minimum is this amount, now here if I try to calculate mean stress, sigma max plus sigma mean, but sigma mean value is basically negative, but your value should be same. Basically here sigma max by 2 and sigma amplitude is basically sigma max minus so this value should be 0, this value should be
Sigma max.
sigma max. Now you see, it is basically reverse stress. Okay, this stress is basically reverse loading, so stress will be reverse stress when your mean stress will be 0. Are you getting my point? So when I am writing here maximum completely
Yes.
reverse stress, for which it is assumed that the material will not fail. So what is reverse stress? You see this example. Here, suppose due to the loading, you are getting sigma max. Suppose there is only one type of material, one type of stress. These fibers will come here. Then these fibers will be under tension. This fiber will be under compression. The magnitude will be same, but sense will be different. Sense will be opposite. One is your compression, one is tension. Value will be same for these two loadings. So for this type of problem, you will get when there is simple pure bending, there is no other type of loadings. Then only you may expect that the specimen, that the component will experience reverse loading then for this type of component. Okay, reverse stress maybe say reverse tensile stress, reverse compressive stress, reverse shear stress, reverse bending stress. But here maximum completely reversed stress for which it is assumed that the material would not fail regardless the number of cycles. So here you see these materials will experience this type of reverse loading and that stress will be reverse stress. Now what is repeated? Should I erase this part? Then I can easily draw it there, or I can use different color.
Yes.
If I use green color, can you see that thing? This
Yes,
one?
sir.
Okay. What is repeated then? The repeated is your loading will be like this. Your mean line is here, but your time axis is here. That is sigma. It's negative. This is origin. So load will increase up to the maximum one, then it will come to 0. Again it will come to the maximum one, then again it will come to 0. So this way it will go. So here sigma m will be how much? That sigma max by 2, sigma amplitude, sigma max by 2, because sigma minimum is 0.
Yes, sir.
So that is called basically repeated stress or repeated loading. What is alternating loading? Similar to this, in alternating loading, some part of the compression will be under this line, just like this. Like this. So minimum stress for sigma minimum, there should be one value, but that is not same as this one. Sigma max is not sigma min. For this repeated loading, reverse loading, this is the case, but it's not same for this alternating loading. In alternating loading, some part of the stress value may be negative. Okay, so accordingly you can use the expression to calculate mean stress for amplitude stress there.
স্যার এখানে কি সিগমা মানে অল্টারনেটিং এ কি সিগমা মিনিমাম প্রত্যেকটা সাইকেলেই কি সেম?
Yes, it should be. It should be same. It should be same.
ওকে স্যার,
Okay, this should be same. Then only we can tell it is alternating loading.
ওকে স্যার,
Basically, we try to simplify the loadings. Okay, actually, it may differ with this, but for the simplification of the design problem, we try to use sine curve and try to estimate that way. Okay. Now the thing is, we have to
Sir,
find. Yes.
বলছি স্যার ম্যাক্সিমাম কমপ্লিটলি রিভার্স স্ট্রেসটা সিগমা মিন কি করে হলো একটু বলবেন, আরেকবার বুঝতে পারলাম না ওই জায়গাটা।
এখনো ম্যাক্সিমামটা যায়নি।
আচ্ছা স্যার, ওই বললেন না সিগমা মিন।
রিভার্স স্ট্রেস।
আচ্ছা স্যার, স্যার রিভার্স স্ট্রেসটা শুধু সিগমা মিনটাকে কেন বলছেন? সিগমা অ্যামপ্লিটিউডটাও
Here, no. It is basically your reverse stress, but what I have highlighted here, for reverse stress, this mean stress should be 0. That was the highlight point. Understand? How
Okay,
do you
sir.
understand whether this loading or this type of loading is reversed or not? So you have to find mean stress. If the mean stress is 0, that means that loading is reversed loading.
ওকে স্যার,
Understand?
বুঝতে পারছি। হ্যাঁ স্যার, বুঝতে
But
পারছি।
for all other cases, your mean stress will not be 0.
ইয়েস
There should be some value.
হুম হুম।
Okay, but in
Okay, sir.
reverse loading, your mean stress should be 0. So by calculating mean stress only, you can say whether loading is reversed
রিভার্সড হ্যাঁ
or not.
অর নট। ইয়েস স্যার।
Okay. Now you tell me, for static loading, where is static loading? Here. For static loading, what is the value of mean stress? And what is the value of amplitude stress for static loading?
স্যার এখানেও কি সিগমা মিনটা 0
No.
স্ট্যাটিক লোডিং?
In static loading, sigma
Acha.
mean should not be 0. Then there is nothing. Because in static loading, your amplitude stress should be 0, not your mean stress. There is no fluctuation of the stress here. That is
Yes, sir.
why your sigma amplitude should be 0. For static loading, amplitude stress, there is no fluctuating like this. So you will not get this variation or variable load or variable stress. Okay, so amplitude stress or variable stress, here you see, suppose it is sigma max minus sigma max by 2, that should be 0. But mean stress, there should be some value in mean stress. Okay, so you may differentiate between static loading and dynamic loading, or static loading to reverse loading. Understand?
ইয়েস স্যার।
Now, as I informed you, fatigue failure always starts from one discontinuity or cracks. And this crack may be a small one like blowholes. You have made once a keyway or keyhole. So from say sharp corners, due to some say discontinuity of surface quality, depending on the different machining operations, due to say stamping in when we do some machine workshop or this type of job, there we try to mark something, and for that marking we try to use stamping. We say your roll number we want to stamp there for the recognition of the of your job. So from that also, depending on the loading, a crack may initiate, and that crack, due to the cyclic loading or nature of the loading, the crack will propagate, and from there the failure will come. So here, as I said, high factor of safety will not work. Rather, we have to find the endurance limit of the component. Now, how the endurance limit is calculated? Sorry. To calculate the endurance limit, we use reversed bending test. Okay, we call it using high speed rotating beam machine. Okay. Now, what we do? It is also called RR Moore's high-speed rotating beam machine. What we do here, we take one standard specimen like this. Give me 1 minute, please.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Now, what we do, we take one standard specimen like this. And the specimen will be fixed in this machine. Okay. Now, the total dimension of this I should use a different layer for this anyway. You may understand now that we should use different layer for this dimensioning. And this value is 7.5 millimeter. Okay. And this surface is basically highly polished surface, machined and highly polished. Now what we do, the loading is important. We apply the load in such a way that you will experience only bending moment, a constant bending moment, and maximum bending stress will be at the minimum cross-sectional area at this position where the minimum cross-section is there. So we have to apply the load so that we get only the bending stress in the specimen, pure bending in the specimen, and bending moment is constant throughout the length of the specimen. And maximum bending stress, if the bending moment is constant throughout the length of the specimen, maximum bending stress should be at the position of the minimum cross-sectional area. Now what we do with this specimen, we rotate this specimen up to its fracture, up to the failure. Now what we'll do, we'll record two things. One, the loading, we call it a stress value, and we'll record number of cycles it takes to fail. Okay. Now stress value, say for example, I am starting with say 99% of your tensile strength. Say for example, for this number cycle it takes say N1. Say for example, one physical value. It's an example only. Okay. Say after 75 cycles, you are getting the failure. Next, say I am taking 0.95 into sigma ut. Say for example, now it is coming up to say 125 cycles for 90% of sigma ut. Say now it is taking say 210. So this way we'll try to record the data. Do you understand how we are getting it?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now what we do, using one log graph paper, we try to plot this data. Okay. And we'll get this type of curve. This is called basically number of cycles. Okay, now we will get, definitely we will get some points like this. Okay, like this, and through this we have to plot, we have to draw one line, say this one, later than say this one, and the third, yes, the third one is like this. Okay, so this is called fatigue strength S. So this curve is popularly known as SN curve. So from here we try to estimate the value of endurance limit. So here you will find three regions. One is up to this, and after this. So this value is basically 0. This value is equal to basically 3. This is called 6. 3 means 1000 cycle, 10 cube. This one value is physically, it is 10 to the power
6. Yes.
Okay. So corresponding to this, you will get the strength, fatigue strength of the material. Suppose you know the number of cycles the material should survive, and for that you may get the fatigue strength of the material from the SN curve, and you have to design the material below this strength so that the material may survive up to the specified life. So this way we can design the component based on this SN curve. Now this region is called low cycle fatigue. This is called high cycle fatigue. So this region is basically finite life, sorry, finite life, and beyond that it is called infinite life. Now what is the significance of this? In low cycle fatigue, with small number of cycles, the material will fail. In high cycle fatigue, it will fail, but it will take longer time. But beyond this point, 10 to the 6, statistically, beyond this, if I design the component with a stress level of this one or below this, the material should get infinite life. If I use this stress level, the material will survive up to this number of cycles, right? But if I try to design the component at this stress or below this, the material will get infinite life. Do you understand this logic? So this value, this limit value is called endurance limit. It is also called fatigue limit. So we have to design the component based on this endurance limit or fatigue limit when the component is subjected to this type of fatigue loading. Now, this is the maximum completely reverse stress. This is the maximum complete reverse. If we go beyond this, the material should have finite life. It is below this endurance limit, so material should get infinite life. Statistically, we are saying this statistically. If the component survives up to 10 to the 6 cycles, then we call it is material has got infinite life. So from here we have to understand what is the definition of endurance limit. Is there any problem to understand the definition now? What is endurance limit or fatigue limit? And based on this only we can design the component under fatigue loading.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir.
Yes.
Now we will understand how to calculate the endurance limit. Is there any rule or is there any equation to estimate the endurance limit from tensile test data? Yes, it's possible. Generally, for our design class, later on also we will discuss this thing when we will discuss in detail for fatigue loading. Sorry. Okay. Now we may estimate like this for cast iron, say sigma E is estimated as 0.45 into tensile strength. For steel, about 50% of sigma, though it is dependent on your tensile strength value. Later on in detail, we can mention this value. Okay, so that is the way we may design the component under fatigue loading. But here at this point, we are interested to define the endurance limit. So now the definition of endurance limit is clear to you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
So
sir.
basically here in my lecture, I am trying to combine lecture 1, lecture 2, the shared material with you. Lecture 1 and lecture 2, you have got probably 2 PPTs. So we are trying to
Yes, sir.
combine these two. Okay. So definitely we will try to discuss all the things there. So next class means Thursday, we will start from this point and we will continue this.
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir.
Okay,
So
sir.
is there any question from your side?
স্যার
Yes.
হ্যালো,
Yes, yes.
হ্যাঁ আমরা কেন 10⁶টাকে 6 এর পর থেকে সাইকেলটাকে কেন আমরা ইনফিনাইট লাইফ ধরে নেব?
Statistically, it is that if the material can survive up to this level, we assume that statistically it has got infinite life. We expect that thing. Okay, that is
Oh.
in different. There may be different things, but we generally we in different books you will get 10⁶ only as the limit. Okay, so statistically that is the value, but in practice basically you see the material will fail. Material will not get infinite life, but statistically you can say, hey, yes, the material has got infinite life. Okay, so
Okay,
in
sir.
our next class we will continue from this. If you do not have
Okay,
any
sir.
question, you may stay, you may leave, otherwise you may stay back, we may discuss the questions here. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
okay, okay, thank you.